I'm very excited to come back to share my work. I was here from 1996 to 2000. So I graduated in 2000, and Dr. Roseman is my mentor. So he sent me a request. He cannot be here, but he said, please record it and I'll listen later. So very sweet. Yeah, I did have a good time here. I hope you all, enjoy your time here as well. So yeah, today I'm going to share my work in epidemiology, focus on neurological disease. And I also want to introduce you the model system longitudinal database. It's as a matter of fact, I use that for my dissertation research. So the database had been used by multiple PhD students for dissertation. So think about it. So I don't need to do this, right? Epidemiology first, right? When you read article, either it's a clinical case report, it's a research, they always started with epidemiology, right? How common is the problem, who are at risk? So that's epidemiology. When you write a grant, when you review a grant, everybody start with epidemiology too, because they want to justify why I'm doing this. Because this is so important, this is a problem. So that's epidemiology. So epidemiology first. So what I'm going to do, as I said, I'll introduce you to the NIDILRR model system program and longitudinal database. I'll specifically focus on spinal cord injury model system program database. Then I'll give an example, how impactful the database has been to forecast, what's coming up, forecast, guide the prevention effort. So I'll touch on the changing demographic and injury profile of new traumatic spinal cord injury in the United States over the 5 decades. Then I kind of touch on a little bit cohort effect, right? We all lived through that period, right? 2020 to 2022. Is that have anything changed the demographics of this population or the life of this population? So that's I'm going to focus today. So model system database, it's a definite, by definition, it's a prospective, longitudinal, multi-center study. So that's the 3 key. It's prospective, it's longitudinal, we follow them up, and it's multi-center around the country. The purpose of the database is we want to study longitudinal course, longitudinal outcome of these people having catastrophic injuries after they got a really coordinated system of care. So you can see, right? This is kind of will show you set up the rehab standards, right? This is the way to go. So this is a project funded by National Institute on Disability, Independent Living, and Rehab Research, NIDILRR. It's not a MIH, it's not part of MIH, but it's under the same home as MIH, under the Department of Health and Human Services. The beauty of this database is now they are freely available for download from the websites. So these are the 3 catastrophic injury registry. So on the top is spinal cord injury model system. It started in 1970. So it's really probably older than many of you in the room. So it's a funding, right? So every 5 years, there's a competition going on. So for the recent 5 years is 2021 to 2026. They funded 18 centers throughout the country and 4 follow-up centers. And there's one data and statistical center manage the data. So that's located housed at UAB. So you have very easy access to the database. The second registry is traumatic brain injury model system and database. So this is a little bit younger than the spinal cord injury, same structure, similar design, just different patient population. If you are interested in this population, their data are available as well. Current 5-year cycle is they funded 16 centers and 3 follow-up centers. The Data and Statistics Center is located in Craig Hospital in Colorado. And then the third injury registry is burn injury. So it's a catastrophic injury as well, but it's not like a neurological injury. So they are much, much younger, much, much smaller. So if you're interested, their data are available as well. So all the model system program will work with the one model system knowledge translation center, MSKTC, to do the dissemination work, do the translation of knowledge work, and outreach to the community. So it's pretty comprehensive program. So since I'm going to focus on spinal cord injury, so give you a quick overview, what is spinal cord injury, right? It's typically traumatic. It's kind of, you got your bone injury or other reasons. So the spinal cord in the canal got injury, could be bleeding, could be contusion. And then the consequence is that you cannot move your leg, you cannot move your arm, depends on the level of injury. You know, so you lost your sensation, your motor movement, your bladder, your bowel, even sexual function, all got impacted at a different level. So in terms of incidence, we estimate in this country is about 18,000 new cases every year. And in terms of prevalence, we estimate about 2,000 people living with traumatic spinal cord injury in this country. So this may not sound, you know, impressive to you, right? It's not a very common problem. However, it's a lifelong physical disability, you know, and it's high cost. So this table just show you the cost of taking care of a person or a family member with spinal cord injury. So it's not just the first year cost, right? All the surgery, all the care to stabilize everything. Every year you have costs associated with that. We are not talking about other indirect costs, right? Like lost wages and that kind of things. But the good thing is that it's potentially preventable. So that's, you can see how important it is if we understand how that occurs, who at risk, we probably can do a lot to prevent this from happening. The reason the high cost is just so many secondary conditions, medical complications associated with spinal cord injury, right? As you imagine, right? You don't have sensation, so you cannot easily move around. You could easily get a pressure injury or pressure ulcers. And that's very high cost to treat. You got bladder issue, so you will got urinary tract infection, you high level, you cannot breathe easily, you pneumonia, and there's a pain, there's obesity, you know, all kinds of secondary conditions associated with that. So let's go to the database now, let you understand a little bit about the database. So we started in 1970. So the data going back to people injured in 1972. So as August, about 2 weeks ago, you know, there are a total of 32 model system centers around the country have been funded, supported for this data collection across 21 states and DC. As you see from the map, we do have some kind of concentration, right? It's not like equally distributed. And this is hospital-based as well, as you probably already gathered. So this is different from other population registry you are familiar with. This is hospital-based. So in the database right now, we have more than 52,000 people enrolled in the database. And we have more than 132,000 follow-up records. So that's the beauty of the database. We follow them up. You know, most of the registry maybe just register them and don't know what happened after that, but we follow them up. So I give you a little bit sample size here. So we got about 276 individuals have 45 years after injury information. So that helped, right? Study the longitudinal course, study the mortality or survival. And recently we hit 50 years injury participant as well. And UAB is the data center since 1983. So that's the structure, right? As you already know that we call it Form 1 and Form 2. Form 1 cover the initial hospital care data, just when it came to the UAB for rehab. So we collect that baseline data on them. And we also have Form 2, then we follow them up over time. Current schedule is 1 year post-injury, 5 years, and every 5 years. So we used to do annual follow-up, but just because the volume, you know, growing big and funding is just level, so that's we kind of compromise to do every 5 year follow-ups. So the database is still growing, right? Because we're still collecting the data. Currently, as I said earlier, we have 18 funded centers doing Form 1 and Form 2. We have 4 follow-up centers. They only do Form 2 is because they were not fully funded to enroll new patients, but we gave them some fund so they can follow up. They already existed participants. So otherwise, you lost that information on follow-up. And so in terms of the growth rate, we kind of estimate about 1,100 new participants every year, and we got 2,500 follow-up record every year. So it's growing. And in terms of what information included in the database, we basically follow the ICF model, International Classification of Functioning, Disability, and Health. So it's a different domain, right? Body function and structure. So those are more medical stuff, activities, their daily living, how independent they are, then participation, the employment, right? And their education, community participation. And then we also have contextual factor, right? Personal factor. So these are all your usual suspect, right? Your demographic, your behavior, but also we got a lot of psychosocial wellness measurement fall into that category as well. And we also take care of environmental factors, right? Their insurance, where they live, their neighborhood, technology, and their health services. So this is more like disability model, right? So when you talk about spinal cord injury, you may think about their impairment. Can they move their leg? Do they have sensation? Their health status. So this is more like, because so they cannot do this. That's the medical model. But what we try to do is also focus on the environment, right? The social perspective. How can we make the environment or the social life, society, more community, more accessible to them? So that's the social model of disability. That's what we try to cover both sides, the database. So in terms of source of data, definitely we get a lot of information from medical record review, especially during the initial care. We do direct neurological exam. We measure their body weight because obesity is an issue. But most of them, especially follow-up, is participant self-report, right? One definitely is feasibility issue. It's easier. Sometimes it's hard to have them coming back for different exams. The travel, transportation is challenging for them. Second is that we want to hear from them, right? It's a self-report, right? Nothing about us without us, right? They self-perceive health, how they feel, about their life, not our judgment. And we link to some death record, like the National Death Index as well, to study the mortality. And we create some kind of tool on the website so physician can answer their patient's questions. Now, how long can I live? We have that kind of tool based on the data here. So we also have a lot of quality assurance. So that's the good thing about this database, right? Population registry, sometimes just convenient data. But this is a funded project. So we do have funding, have designated personnel, and data center have funding to develop different software quality check to them. And we do the certification, we do the training, and we meet regularly to refine all the guidelines as well. And so on the website, if you are interested, you go to uab.edu/MSCI-SC, National SCI Statistical Center. There are all kinds of information there can help you learn the database better. And also there is a place you can go and download the de-identified data. We also give you a list of database publications so you can see, have my idea being addressed yet, and data access requests. So in terms of how the database have been used, we produce the annual report, look at almost all the variable in the database to show the frequency. So give you a general idea, what's the sample size for your research and what kind of trend we are looking now, facing now. And then, can help you generate your research question. Definitely, we can set a rehab standard. People can see how the model system is doing, my hospital performance, can be compared as well. And definitely the data going big and big. We see more and more machine learning, data-driven research to predict, to create some kind of prediction tool to improve the care. Definitely there's a limitation. The strength, hopefully you agree with me, is a longitudinal, right? That's nothing like this in the world. The biggest, the longest, still running research spinal cord injury database, traumatic. It's relatively geographically diverse as well, in the follow-up data. We got excellent case identification just because we have designated personnel go through training or standardized data collection, quality control. But limitation, as I said, this is not population-based, right? It's hospital-based. So we're always being asked, how representative is your study sample? And because it's not population based, you cannot really calculate the incidence rate or prevalence rate based on the database. And follow-up is a beauty, but lots to follow-up is challenging too. So we are not exception. We got lots of follow-up issue to deal with as well. And also, although this is a longitudinal study, but change over time, which should be appreciated, right? You cannot do the same thing for 50 years, collect the same thing for 50 years, because things change. You need to address emerging topics, for example, technology, right? You won't ask, do you use cell phone 20 years ago? But now we have to, right? Because that's kind of digital divide, that's kind of health too. Obesity become an issue in this country. So that's kind of, variable revision every 5 years. We do look at the database, how can we improve or what need to be added, what can gone, what can be removed. And because the funding, the data collection side relatively change over time. So that's kind of, put some challenges for longitudinal research as well. But I will say that provided that statistics are interpreted with cautious, understanding how the data were collected, analyzed, is still very valuable source to advance the knowledge in spinal cord injury rehab and care. And still finding is relevant, very relevant to service provider, policymaker, and researchers. And database have been regarded as a trusted information source, as you can imagine how many disinformation out there. So we feel the responsibility to tell the truth, show data-driven, and also at the same time make a disclaimer like, what the potential issue, a limitation. So any questions so far about the database before I move on to epidemiology research? So as Dr. Sadi just said earlier, we are always looking for students. My team in 1983 is from here. Luckily, most of them are the same group of people. But the time for retirement is kind of cross-world changes. I really like to, invest on our new teams here. So if you are interested, either just part-time students or you are about graduated for a full-time job, I'm happy to talk to you to see if we have something for you and we can join our team. So what I'm going to do is as I said, epidemiology first, right? So this is the article I published in 2016. Then I won an award, most cited award in 5 years. So you can see the value of epidemiology. I published in a clinical journal. So ARCA is one of the high impact journal in rehabilitation field. So this is one award. So that people do need that data to support their work. And also for my presentation, I also supplement with more recent annual report to kind of give you a picture of the spinal cord injury in this country. So basically, our population change over time, and we need to look at our spatial population as well to document the demographic injury profile, which will help us, be responsive, right, in terms of prevention program, in terms of allocation of services to them, because we need to know who they are, right, where they are. So that's the overall purpose of this project. So I got data from here. That's nowhere you can get this type of data, right? 50 years data, large sample size. You can see, for you break down by 10 years, it's a pretty good size of this patient population. And so on the lab, you can see that's the criteria for this database. As I said, we did not include everyone. But at least we'll make it clear to people when they interpret our data. So this is our population over the last 50 years. This is a general US population. Our average age increased, right, over time, steadily, gradually. And the graph on your right is the percentage of people older than equal or older than 65 years old. So the percentage, now it's up to 2015 is about 15.6%. That's our US population. How about SCI population? So that's the people enrolled in the database from that time period, 1972 to 2019. You can see we are older too, but we are aging much faster than the general population, right? That's kind of interesting, right? The average age injury right now in 2015 is 43.4. Is older, right? Kind of gradually. In terms of percentage of people older than 65, we are catch up too. In 1970, only 3%. Now it's about the same as the general population. So what this graph tell you, right? If the age specific incidence rate is the same, consistent across all age group, you should see the parallel. You should see the parallel line, right? We grow, SCI will grow at the same path because the overall population is older. So if all of them have the same incidence rate, all the age group has same incidence rate, translate to spinal cord injury, you should be very parallel. But it's not the case. We are much older. 65 years old. So that means that you can look at the gray line here. You can see it's kind of like a toothpick, right? For the younger age group, it's a higher incidence rate, and 75 and older is another higher incidence rate. So that's in 1993. So this is another study using a hospital registry, but it's a more national representation. And he also looked at the 2012 data. So you can see the line, the incidence rate. This is the incidence rate kind of shift a little bit. So you can see we do pretty well in the younger age group, right? You see from the gray to the blue, we're going down for the younger age group, 16 to 44, right? We improve that incidence rate. But you look at the 65 years and older, looks like incidence rate increase. So that's kind of explain that, age of the injury kind of averagely is older than the general population because they have higher incidence rate. We see more older group coming to the SCI pool. And same thing for the 65 percentage, right? 65 years old percentage kind of catch up now. And then that's the female. Female have kind of similar trend as well. Like, we improve the incidence rate in the younger age group, but older age group kind of increase. Do you have any explanation why older had higher risk but this is still old data. So we are thinking maybe people get more active, in the older group, they drive more, 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago, they do more sports event or different recreation event, they are more active. So that's one thing we can think about. People getting older, definitely we have more, but in terms of incidence rate, they are more prone to the spinal cord injury. So just give you a little bit more detail about, that age increase over time. It's the same for different sex and racial group. You can see from 1972 to 2019, they all gradually increase for different group. But the Black male, you can see in a slower path in terms of age and injury over time. And that's different etiology, vehicular accident, fall, they all have, you have seen more and more people injured by and older in that different etiology, even sports, right? The average increase as well, although they are still kind of the young one, average is 36 years old. Violence. So if it's a spinal cord injury caused by violence, that's the age group is relative the same between 25 and 30. So it's 27, 28, 29. So kind of give you an idea, right? So violence, your target population. And just a little bit about sex percentage, the blue line is our general population is about half and half, male, female. But in the SCI population, definitely is male dominant. But we can see a little bit in terms of female, the red line is the female percentage. Looks like it's kind of increased a little bit over time. In terms of race distribution, you can see on the very right column is the US population in 2010. So definitely you can see that in the Black, we are 24%. So sounds like, we'll have more Black in this population, than the general population. That means that they may have a higher incidence rate. And Hispanic, we did not catch up to the US. But overall, you can see the minority number percentage increase over time. But definitely, we cannot really say a lot about the racial distribution from the database, just because the geographic distribution, and also the language barrier as well. So most of our study only enroll people who can speak English or Hispanic. So definitely we miss some other races just because the IRB language, barrier. But I'm kind of show you kind of see the trend a little bit over the last 5 years. Etiology, that's very interesting. On the top is vehicular accident, crashes. So it's still the leading cause, but you can see it declined from 46% to 38% recently. And then you can see the fall continue to increase. I think one more reason is the population get old. Most of the fall is due to even just ground floor trip becomes spinal cord injury in the older population. So it's starting to increase recently. So from here, you kind of gather that, okay, age and injury, percentage of minority increase, so you can make a suggestion that, okay, so all the acute care, you need to incorporate some geriatric expert in the care of people with spinal cord injury and intercultural competency as well, to set up the plan, right, care plan over time. And aging with SCI or aging in SCI, so it's a challenging for the healthcare, right? Pre-existing health condition, they already prone to so many secondary conditions. So they add more complexity to the care. They may already have cognitive issues, and then the personal care attendance is needs as well. And we see the trend in full etiology and aging. Definitely the prevention in this group and etiology will be our focus. All right, a little bit about what's going on over the last 2 years, right? We all lived through this, so, we got COVID, we got inflation, we got gun violence, news almost every day. And we still have war going on, outside. So it's pretty tough period of time. So that's kind of make us wondering, is that impact on our patient population we care about? So we look at the age at injury. Is that change the demographic or change the profile of people with spinal cord injury? So I kind of highlight there is the recent 2 years, right? You know, previous slide you showed they kind of steadily, consistently increase. But, you know, so the previous year we do 10 years as a group, close to recent time we do 5 years as a group. So you can see, oh, the blue line, our general population continue to age, right? 38.1 average age to 38.8. But our SCI population looks like doesn't really change much, right? So kind of interesting, make us start to say, okay, and look at, so how about percentage of people older than 65? We do kind of consistent with the general population, right? So last slide, we see 2015 to 19 is 15.9%. The recent 2 years is 17%. It increased just like the general population. So that kind of means that, okay, so the 65 years and older is still a high risk group, right? It's still, you know, an issue. But for the younger group, maybe something kind of shift a little bit. So you take an average, it doesn't really reflect, you know, the trend you expect. So that's the etiology as well. So that's we look at etiology because it does drive your age and injury, right? So you can see, oh, the violence, right, is a big jump from 14% to 18.3%. So again, this is a percentage. So it's one etiology go up, the other can go down. So we expect to see fall keep going up, right? Because aging, you know, fall just a risk in that group. But fall is not the guy violence jump up. So the implication is here. So definitely they, you know, this is just very preliminary finding, very interesting. We definitely can do more to do more investigation, you know, make you wondering, is the COVID pandemic, those social, political unrest or financial, you know, distress, is that play a role in this trend, right? Violence, you know, gun violence, just like in the general population. And then definitely if we can be responsive, you know, to the trend, you know, to take care of this issue before it's too late. So about the other side, we want to also look at, did this parallel the trend in the gun violence in the United States? So definitely is a good question. If you are interested, you know, join us to take a deep dive in this issue. Will this change trickle down to people living with SCI 5 years, 10 years from now? Right, you will see more younger group, or you'll see more violent etiology group. They do have different medical issue associated with different etiology. You know, I did not touch on that different level. So with that, you know, down the road, the allocation of all the resources need to be shifted a little bit to address this new trend. And definitely we want to rule out some artificial effect as well. Well, that because just because you change your designation of model citizen center a little bit, you know, during that period of time, you know, so we want to do some subgroup analysis as well. All right, any questions so far? All right, if you are interested, you know, happy to talk to you, email me, or right after this, maybe you can share your thought with me and something we can look into it as well. So my last topic is about, again, COVID, you know, during a period effect, cohort effect, where that, you know, impact the life of people living with spinal cord injury. So this project, you know, this study, we analyze this, we focus on substance use during the COVID. So I don't think I need to say anything about that time period of time. We all lived through it. We know how difficult it is, right? How unprecedented it is during that period of time. And for this spatial population, they even more challenging for them, right? Because stay home order, you know, you cannot go to the hospital. Why if you got a problem? And they are at high risk of get infection as well, right? They already, cannot breathe very well, already have their own medical condition. So definitely it's a challenging to them. And so that's we can, and so understand what kind of life they live with, what kind of issue they deal with, so we can be ready for the next crisis. So that's basically this study about. So again, this just happens so quickly. You are not prepared to do a prospective study to follow them up, to assess their changes, before and after. As I said, we only do data collection every 5 years. As you can imagine, during that time, data collection is challenging as well. In terms of enrollment, researcher cannot go to hospital, as a matter of fact, right? We lost patients. Some hospital closed, like I know Mount Sinai, they closed their rehab hospital to convert it into COVID care bed. Just the emergency, just the priority. Follow up as well. People just don't want to talk to you. I got other things to deal with. So just different things. Very interesting, challenging time. But luckily, we do have cross-sectional data we can compare with, right? We compare 2 periods of time, the data we collected during pre-COVID and during the COVID time. So we go from March to December in 2020. So for our pre-COVID, we kind of stay with March to December, but we use 3 years to get more like an average picture, more steady pictures. So that's the sample size. So we compare the baseline to see, we do compare apple to apple, right? We are not compare apple to orange. So fortunately, they are pretty similar between these 2 cohorts, right? In terms of age, they are average about almost 50 years old. They almost 15 years after injury averagely. In terms of male, female percentage, minority percentage, their education, marital status, etiology are very similar. Their neurological level are similar as well. In terms of the regions, right? There's a lot of regions, state policy difference. So we want to look at where they live, will that have different impact. So fortunately, they are pretty similar across these 2 cohorts. So for substance use, we do have we do ask this question in our interview. It's relatively new. We use the World Health Organization ASSIST a questionnaire. It basically is a self-report data. Asked how often they use these 8 or 9 substances within the past 3 months. And then we also have another questionnaire called Odyssey to ask about the frequency, how often they use alcohol. Then we can translate to a score and kind of estimate their alcohol use disorder. So you look at the table there in terms of alcohol use at risk for alcohol use disorder, they are about the same. We did not see difference between these 2 periods of time. You look at the substance use, you can see the cannabis, that's kind of marijuana, pot. For that, we did not ask, is it legal or not legal where you live, just overall your use. So you can see the increase significantly, but 25% versus 29% in terms of the number increase is not kind of dramatic, but still it's a big number in terms of number of people. And then you see opioids, percentage is not very high, but it's double during the pandemic time. Another borderline significant is the sleeping pill use, did increase a little bit. But the rest of the substance is very small number, it's hard to make any conclusion. Then we look at, is that by different demographic and regional. So you can see for opioid, male, female in use, in that group are all increased use, and male had a little bit higher than female. For cannabis, increase, but female doesn't reach the statistical significance. Sedative and sleeping pill increase a little bit, but not significant. For racial differences, for opioid use, while particularly in the Hispanic group, jumped from 1.9 pre-COVID and 8.4 during the COVID time. But overall, opioid increase the use in, greater use of opioid during the pandemic. We see in the white group, in the black group as well, and they all statistically significant. For cannabis, kind of all increase across different groups, but only white reached the statistical significance. Sleeping pill in the Hispanic group looks more problematic. For regional variation, opioid is an issue in the South. Even before we are 6.1% higher than other regions. During the COVID, it jumped twice higher in terms of the use of opioid. It's illegal non-prescription use because our patient did get some prescribed opioid to treating their pain, but this is, not prescribed opioid use. And you see for the South, they all increase use, right? The cannabis, the sleeping pill, we all see significance in the South. So I'll say that since looks like the COVID-19 pandemic was associated with a greater use of non-prescribed substance in the traumatic brain injury population, particularly cannabis, sedative, and opioid. It's relatively narrow the trend in the general population. There's a recent review article there. It's kind of the same trend in the general population during the pandemic. And the doubling of the illicit opioid use, particularly in the South, is a concern, right? As you all know, accidental opioid deaths is a problem, especially recently during the pandemic. So the message is that effective substance use treatment resources delivered to this population is needed, just as in the general population, particularly the opioid treatment. So just keep in mind, yes, there's a limitation of this study. This is hospital-based sample. There's a certain criteria to be enrolled in the database. And this is a self-report data, right? This is a sensitive question. Do they give us the honest answer or not? They may underreport it, right? And this is a cross-sectional design. It's a two different people. We are not following up and see before and after. So in terms of causality, definitely is some limitation there. But however, this is definitely a very robust data, can be shared with other researchers, service provider, and policymaker with the understanding of the study limitation. So that's all I have for now. We still got about 15 minutes. This will be our new hospital. You may see the rehab hospital. You may see the construction going on, right? That's our new hospital. Hopefully will be ready in 1 year. I think it's 2025 spring. So welcome to join us. We are also traumatic brain injury model system data collection sites. We are not a data center, but if you join us, maybe we can go for that data center in 2027. So make it 2 data centers at UAB. So anyway, so that's, we're always hiring. There's a lot of opportunity out there. So you just contact me if you are interested.